Great. So let's keep moving down the analytics pipeline, if you don't mind. How about machine learning and AI? So you mentioned data science in there. So you tell me you do have some data science use cases in play. This is a more sparse field in terms of the vendors we track, but it's the major, the usual suspects, the Microsoft, AWS, Google, pretty far out ahead in terms of provision, but Databricks here overtaking even AWS now in the ML and AI space. I want to see 64% and 65 is just a hair behind Microsoft now. So the second highest ML and AI name, which is interesting to see, and growing in provision as well, as you can see, just moving to the right. And then other players, you've got smaller names like Anaconda and H2O and Dataiku. Any comments on some of these and maybe which of these tools you have in play or exploring?
Yeah. I mean, we did spend quite a bit of time in 2022. That was one of my strategic objectives, was to build out our machine learning and data science competency where I'm at. And so we ended up actually selecting Azure ML. So we are in the Microsoft realm. Even though our data warehouse is Snowflake, and there isn't really what I would call a native integration between the two, but what we did and what we were looking at from a machine learning platform perspective, one, cost was a huge component. We wanted something where we could organically grow our competency.
Sorry, you just had an audio jump out. Did you miss something? So cost was a big player for Azure, was where you left off.
Yeah. We went with Azure, their machine learning platform. A big driver for us was building scores, right? So we're building models that would produce scores, things like lead scoring as an example.
Sure. Yep.
Very simple function, right? That most organizations have or want to have, frankly. And so what we were doing was building machine learning models in Azure. They have a function that allows you to publish those services or expose those machine learning models as a web service. And then we integrated that right into our operational system, which happens to be Salesforce. So we were building and integrating scores into our production workflows. And, it worked like a charm with Azure. We did look at Databricks, and what it boiled down to, as I mentioned before, for us, is just the DevOps, or lack of a what I would call a true DevOps competency. When I was doing a comparison with Databricks versus Azure ML, there's just fewer components to manage, right? To build Databricks is from my perspective, a much more robust, complete solution. But to run the machine and configure the machine, you definitely need a DevOps competency. It's not really self-service, where Azure, I was able to get my data scientist, plug them in, and just let her start working with the team. And we were able to go from training to deployment in a couple of weeks. So
pretty quickly.
It's fairly inexpensive. But I've experienced with other players on here. Dataiku, I've had. I thought is an amazing platform because they what they do there, at least for me, the thing I loved about them was you can get your data scientists in their platform, or you can get your data analysts working in the same space, same playground, and be able to move back and forth between the two. I think and you don't need to be a developer, right? You don't need to be writing Python code,
right?
Your data scientist, exactly. So I've had a lot of success. I didn't end up ultimately bringing it in here, but I've had some success previously with Dataiku, and I'm a big fan of what they do.
Great. And some of these other names on the field as well. What's your hunch about Databricks? While you mentioned it, we added them to the database data warehousing sector this semester. Excuse me. Yeah, it's like back in school. We added it this most recent survey, and it kind of shot to the top of the list. So it seems to be growing in its sort of aim of getting more and more business, both as a data management tool, but also as, of course, an AI and machine learning platform. What do you think is going to happen with that? This is more of a crystal ball question, but
I mean, I still think they continue to grow, right? Grow very fast. Part of it is their go-to-market strategy, and their a way of engaging kind of your frontline data workers, data science workers, analysts. I mean, they had my whole team engaged and captivated and learning, and then coming to me saying, hey, we're all learning Databricks on our own time. The resources are great, the onboarding, the webinars, their training. To some extent, some of our guys got a little bit of an education from Databricks on best practices on doing their job, right? And I think that is a very powerful tool that they're wielding better than anybody. If I needed help with Azure ML, right, I'm kind of on my own, right? You kind of get what you're paying for, right? It's part of the Microsoft machine. I would need to bring in ISV, where Databricks provides a lot of materials to kind of get people engaged and acclimated and running. So there's a lot to be said for that, and that's presumably why they've been so successful.
Great. Well, great. We're coming up on the end of time here. If you don't mind, we'll kind of wrap up. But I want to finish with a kind of a question for you about what you're excited about in 2023. So there's a lot of hype and a lot of buzz always about kind of the trends, or what's hot in 2023, or this going to 60% of all business is going to be blah blah blah. These predictions are sort of flimsy. I think it's always nice to actually ask people what it is they think is really going to happen. What are your predictions for what's going to be big in tech this year that's going to influence business and really take hold? There's a lot of things like the metaverse and ChatGPT and
you nailed it. The metaverse. I mean, personally, I was very, very intrigued by metaverse, but I think as far as enterprise goes, I say that, but there's a lot of enterprises who are doing pretty amazing, innovative things around training and simulation with VR, but that's not as pervasive. I think the biggest trend that we'll see, I think anyone in technology right now is trying to figure out how they're going to manage and integrate AI, because our expectations of what AI is and what it could be and what it should be is completely changed now with ChatGPT. I mean, unless if that was something you were really honed in and focused in on, any dinner meeting, lunch meeting, heck, meeting with my having dinner with family who know nothing about technology, the conversation is this, AI, the capability with ChatGPT. So I know for me, as an example, I have my analysts now running all their code through ChatGPT to write, to comment their code and document it.
Wow.
And so I think my take on it, at least, is that at least as it goes for my team, my expectations for productivity and throughput should increase, right? I've set a target of 20%, because if I can have those who are writing code debugging and documenting and commenting and sharing information more efficiently, then I should see. The expectation is that they do less, right? Now my expectation is that I get more done. And I think there's a lot of leaders out there who are looking at it the same way. How do I integrate this thing into what we do?
Yeah, very interesting. It's sort of, I can't think of one technology that's really come up this fast where the buzz is actually kind of seems appropriate in terms of the buzz and the press and the hype matching the actual enterprise adoption of this. We decided to throw in kind of the last minute. I'm glad we did. In our ETS survey, which is in the field now, we already have 1,000 people that have taken it, which is great. I think we might be breaking some records on response rates again. We added OpenAI, the makers of ChatGPT, just to see what would come out of it. And here it is, right at the top of the field in terms of this is kind of evaluation rates, or sort of people exploring it for the first time. It is way up here. It is so far out ahead of everything. Everyone's looking at it.
So I won't point out any vendors in particular, but
Sure.
I would assume that if you're in this space and you are working on something similar, there's probably a number of vendors out there who feel like BlackBerry right now after Apple released the iPhone.
Yeah.
Right. And the
Yeah.
conversations and some of the commentary is going to look very, similar. Where's the keyboard, right? And
Yeah.
we've moved beyond the keyboard very quickly, literally in the course of 2 months.
Yeah.
And
2 months. You're right.
we're going to see some separation for companies that have .ai at the end of their business name and product are now going to be kind of put to the test now that like I said, the expectation has changed. So I think that's what we're going to see for the rest of the year, right? As you show, right, by your survey in literally what, 2 months?
Oh, it's wild. Yeah. This is an outstanding response to a brand new vendor on the space. I mean, they've been around longer, but it's the first time we tracked them.
It's going to help.
Phenomenal.
It's going to help the other vendors though, because it's giving visibility, like the good vendors that are vendors that are and position themselves well and have a great product. I think it's only going to help them.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, going to this, go back to this, your wheelhouse of analytics, I'm thinking too, the ChatGPT, of course, Microsoft's put a huge investment in this, and they're already starting to, I think supposedly it's already available now, this ChatGPT integration with Teams, with some premium Teams. So it's coming out quick. But, curious to see what Microsoft will do with it. They're already kind of the runaway with Power BI in terms of provision. It's kind of embedded everywhere. Power BI before, this makes me think of augmented analytics and sort of natural language, search-based analytics or natural language generation, where you can have actual wording or whole PowerPoint decks generated for you off of visualizations. This is something that, of course, ThoughtSpot, built their business on, and Tellius as well. And but all the major players, Microsoft's got Power BI, Q&A, Tableau has Ask Data and Explain Data, Click has Insight Bot, right? They've been working on these for a while. So curious to see if this is the big watershed moment for, NLP driven augmented analytics. If now that we have this engine like ChatGPT, which is only in its infancy really, in terms of scale, if that's really going to really accelerate these vendors.
I think it will. And I think some of those natural language capabilities kind of feel like I'm interfacing with my stove compared to ChatGPT now. So, like I said, the leaders in that area will probably figure out how to weave it into what they do.
Yeah.
And it'll be exciting to see kind of where it goes. But whatever it is, it seems like it's going to happen pretty fast.
Yeah. And kind of curious too, the big barrier for things like ThoughtSpot was that, it works really well from a natural language processing perspective, but you kind of have to have really good quality, well-formed data behind the back end. Yeah, everything has to be pretty clean, which most people don't have a clean house, right? With data. So that was kind of the hurdle for them. But ChatGPT might be cutting through that. We'll see.
Could a little bit if you have scale, and then but otherwise for companies like us, my message back to my leaders has always been, especially as we've gotten more into data science and machine learning, is all paths lead back to governance.
Yeah.
Right. Governance of metadata, governance of your data. The better poised you are from that perspective, the more ready you are to take on these new exciting technologies. So
yeah, well said. Well, perfect. Thank you so much, Ryan. This has been a great conversation. I think it's exciting to talk to you here at the infancy of a new technology that we'll see probably take over this year. So it's exciting.